Hey guys, this is episode 53 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself, Rugby H, as well as the Q lads. First of all, man, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, Tim. Last round of Super Rugby, we had some absolute cracking games taking place. Of course, there were the two that were the odd ones out. That was the start and the end of the week. But in between, games going right down to the wire. And a lot of excitement heading into this weekend because we do get to see once again some more derbies taking place. New Zealand versus New Zealand, Australia versus Australia. Could be very crucial heading into those playoff games, which every side, fun fact, Tim, we're going to keep on saying it, every team can still make the quarterfinals.
Exactly.
What are they doing? How is that possible?
It is mad. It is actually crazy to say that because, in previous seasons, you can kind of tell already by this stage, or at least by one more round, which you can tell, okay, the 8 teams. But no, everything's still up to play for. And it's, it's exciting because, that's what this season has been. It's been very unpredictable, but it's led towards exciting games in the late stages of this competition. So it's good. But, again, before we get into this, in terms of, I guess, just talking about the results as well as the fixtures, make sure to give a like for this video, guys. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And, let us know in the comments anything you want to kind of discuss for the future as well, or just kind of what your thoughts were on last week's games as well as the upcoming ones. But, in terms of the fixtures that we had last week, there were some really big fixtures, of course. I think the first one I'll discuss is probably Reds Rebels, just because that's a big fixture in terms of like the Australian kind of derby in a way, like where both teams are having a good season. Like both of them are having a great season, actually. It was one of those like where I thought the Rebels were really good in this game. Like they kind of were the better team actually in that first half. I was very surprised by that actually, because I honestly thought going into this game it'd be one of those like where the Reds would be in front for a majority of it, and the Rebels may come back into it. But it was actually the other way around, where the Rebels actually took the lead early on and kind of held it for a period of time, and then the Reds obviously just came back right into it, and got that win. So it was a good win for them. Like, what was your thoughts on that one?
Can I be completely honest with you, Tim?
Yes.
I believe we did the live stream for that game, but I can't remember a single minute of it. I feel like I'm starting to lose my memory when it comes to rugby. Like, I think that the lack of sleep is starting to really kick in. I think Tim Ryan scored again, I believe, later on in the game. That is about the only thing that I remember about that contest. I remember at the time, I'm sure I really enjoyed it with the fact that it went down to the wire. Yeah, just like most of the games did of the weekend. I think there was just too much close rugby that I think I malfunctioned. But I'll probably have to rewatch that game because I'm pretty sure it was a good one. Yeah,
it was actually
going late. The Rebels were close to being able to get back into that contest, but unfortunately just let down in the end. Not quite able to get the job done, but still get the bonus point, which can be crucial at this stage of the competition.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Again, with the other kind of fixtures that we had along the week, again, yes, Chiefs beat Monaco go by a considerable amount. Nana Satiro did pretty well on that one. He scored a really good try. I'm not sure if you saw that one. He scored a really nice chip and chase try for himself. I was pretty happy. He was my captain for fantasy, but really the big one in terms of.
Sorry, we've got to cut you off there, Tim. Who did you go with as your fly half for fantasy?
I went with Ben Dawson, so I did very well. Yeah, I did very well. I'm not trying to see, this is where I'm trying to be very calm in the way I say this, but I'm doing very well in fantasy this year. Very well. Like I'm 19th.
Like you've just really jinxed it.
I'm 19th in the world in terms of fantasy. So I'm having a good year. So
how many people do it? Is it like a few thousand?
Over 8,000. Over 8,000. Okay. Yeah. So it's a cool. It's like I'm just like, geez, okay. If I could get to the top 10, I'd be pretty happy. That's kind of
I wouldn't be able to sleep, because I'd be constantly thinking, who am I going to go with next week? Because you could drop from 17 to 500 real quick.
Exactly.
If you have a bad week, everything goes out the window. So,
and the thing is that with this week as well. We'll get into the whole fixtures shortly, guys. But there's a lot of kind of changes in squads. So I've had to kind of switch around a few players in my team that would normally be kind of, they're seen as starters, but now they're kind of switching up the teams for a bit of them. So I've had to take a -6 actually for this week. I've done it a few times, but it's one of those. It's like where you take an extra transfer essentially. So you're given 4 transfers a week for players, but you can take an extra. You can take as many extra ones as you want, but if you took an extra transfer, it's like a -6 so it's -6 points from the overall score you get at the end. So it's it's like you really are just thinking, okay, do you think if you take that extra transfer in terms of -6, can you get more points? Like, will you be able to kind of get more points from that player? It's kind of the way you have to think about it. So it's just one of those, like, where would you rather have a player starting in that position or just get no points from them at all? So it's a risk, but I've gone with it. So we'll see if it pays off or not. But anyway, going back to the results, the big one, of course, was Blues versus Hurricanes. I was indeed very happy about that one, but also on the edge of my seat, and I mean literally the edge of my seat on that for the final 2 minutes, as the Hurricanes it was just all set up for them to kind of just win the game through that kind of try scenario. I was bricking it. I was just like, oh my gosh, don't do this to me. But the Blues, no, their defense is just, it has really been the key for them this season. It's again, defense wins kind of titles and championships. So I'm hoping this is something we'll see within the playoffs as well. Not to get carried away, but it was a great game to watch from a 1-2 for a 1-2 top of the table clash. But what was your thoughts on it? Because you also did the live stream as well, so you must have been kind of excited to watch that game.
Well, that's the thing. Like you said, it's what you want in a 1 versus 2. You don't want to see a side when you have that top of the table clash, when you see a side win by 20 points or see a side win by a large margin. The fact that it did go so close, and the fact that now those two sides in what could be their trilogy this year are sitting 1-1. Yeah. The question mark is now, when will they meet again? Will it be this year or will it be next year? Because one of them gets knocked out before reaching that stage of playing each other. Now, they can't play in the quarters, and I would assume they won't be playing in the semi-finals, which would mean the only time that these two sides will face each other is going to be in that final, if they both make it. The question is, who is going to do that, and which is going to be the side that maybe miss out. That is if they remain 1 and 2. Because
exactly. Yeah.
Or semi-final cannot quite happen. But, just a really good game of rugby. The Blues look strong. Hurricanes look strong. I feel like neither of these sides will walk away from that game with too much disappointment. I know that sounds weird to say for the Hurricanes who did lose, but they had many chances to go on and win that game, and the Blues had many chances to be able to also win that game. So Sam Knox's little strip at the end, that sounds dodgy if you don't understand what a strip is in rugby. Pretty much his ripping of the ball, that still doesn't sound great. His interception of possession ended up helping the Blues drastically. That is better than stripping on the field, isn't it? But it was a great game.
There's just a pole on the middle of the field, just like where.
No, I feel like you shouldn't have mentioned poles. Now you've dug a more hole, haven't you?
Anyway, we're going off the point here, but no, it was a good game to watch, and it was one of those where I would say, like, to just not to counteract your point, but I will say that the Hurricanes, I do think, had a lot more chances than the Blues to score tries. I think the Blues were more clinical in their chances, but the Hurricanes, I think, just had a lot more opportunities. Again, like the Blues had 2 try-saving tackles. Like, it was one of those where the Hurricanes could have scored 2 earlier on, but we had I'm trying to think who was the first one. It was Caleb Clark, I believe. You tackled Josh Mobley out on the right wing, and then we had Harry Plummer tackle Ruben Love on the left. So it was one of those where it was very early on. The game could have kind of just changed if those 2 were kind of scored, either one of them really. So it was a lot of defending for the Blues. But I believe you're going to say something. So
I did. I all of a sudden got hit with a thought, and I remembered it from the early stages of the game. Hurricanes. Do you remember earlier on in the season where I mentioned how I was concerned that some of their players' slight selfishness was going to end up costing them a game later down the line? It may have been on the podcast. It may have been in a post-match.
Yes, but I will say the one key player you've always said this for is Riasi. So
he wasn't involved in this one.
So that's why I'm a bit like. So were you just I do know you mentioned this a few times, but Riasi was the one you've always said that's the. So did you also mention other players in this? Because I also
the Hurricanes in general, they had 2 chances, which I want to say are very notable chances to score tries up against the Blues in that first half. Within the first, I think it was 15 minutes. And both times the players went, you know what? I want to try to my name. Rather than a try assist, I'll go myself. I want to say that Balin Sullivan may have been one. And then the other side of things, because there was an easy pass out to Josh Morby, and I would think that was Balin Sullivan's. But then there was also one, maybe Ruben Love. I can't quite remember who it was.
It could
but
have
someone
been
very early on. You know, they had those chances. And I actually said on my live stream at the time, I said, remember those two, because at the end of this game, I'm going to talk about them. And then when they lost by the 4 points, I said, hey,
that's
remember what I said?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Selfishness. You can't have it. You gotta be for the team, Tim. Because or else you're gonna lose big games and it's gonna cost them.
No, I agree. It's one of those like where and that's the thing is that when you look at all the Blues tries they actually scored, I can't really. I'm trying to think. Was there a try which they scored was just like kind of just a one man?
Mark Talia passed the ball, and I loved it.
But what you're going to remind me of which moment because it doesn't happen often. So.
No, it doesn't. It didn't set up a try or anything. I think it was just a pass out on the
it's a good pass.
Space,
no, good on you, Mark. He did get a try for himself in the end. That was actually well worked because I didn't actually see Talea on that right wing. I thought like there was just he was at the time I think it was Nock or Funaki passing the ball out towards the one player. I think it was Forbes who I thought was going to score, but no, he just found. Much later, he just kind of smacked it down right corner. I was like, okay, wow, it's more of an easier try than I thought, but it was well worked. Again, I'm trying to think in that game who really impressed me. I guess like for the Hurricanes, I was impressed by Peter Laka. I was really impressed by him. I thought he had a good game. Wakalawea, I thought was the one who kind of let them down at times because he had like several lineouts, well, from the kickoff especially. He messed up twice from the kickoff where he caught the ball, or at least Caleb Clark challenged him once in the air and he kind of knocked it on. That's one where you can kind of just you can't be mad about that. But there were times where Wakalawea could have done more, I think. But he's an excellent player. Don't get me wrong, guys. He's an excellent player. He just had one of those games where the Blues, I guess, strategically kind of targeted him at points. But no, I guess for the Blues. I'm trying to think, like, who for you was kind of, if you had to name just one Blues player kind of stood out for you in that game, who would it be?
I mean, Caleb Clark's starting to get it up there a little bit in terms of, I think a lot of people are admiring what he's doing this season compared to last. Like, last season, he kind of breezed through it, but this season, he's done some really good moments. I still remember that try-saving tackle that he made where he was able to slap that ball out of that guy's hands. So,
for the Crusaders one, you mean? For Levi Moore?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, I love that one. You know me. I love it when we get there, especially against the Crusaders as well. That's what made me more happy. But
like, I think overall, like, Satutu's still showing that he's going to be the All Blacks number 8 unless something drastic changes. Is this the opportunity now to see Artie Savia move back to 7? Is he even going to get the 7 if Peter Lakai's playing the way that he is? Yeah. You know? It's going to be like a Artie Savia Jr. out there on the park, but
it is, like, it really is. You also have to obviously we'll talk about him later on, by the way, guys. But there's still the question around Sam Cane, and you have Dalton who's having a good season as well. But there's a lot of competition.
He hasn't lit the world on fire, has he, Dalton Papali'i? To be honest,
well, he's not having a season where he had that. He was like MVP one year, like for. I can't remember if it was the season before. Or it was at least in the last 2 seasons. One of those 2 seasons, he was MVP. It was not even close. Like where it's like kind of like the season which Hoskins is having at the moment. It's like where he was just the best player in terms of like forwards for every team. But no, you are right. I wouldn't say Dalton's having like that kind of season where he stood out. But again, he has just been a consistent player. But you are right with Peter Lakai. He's just been he's just come into this. He's just come into his own, really, and again, he's been able to do that because Artie Savia has been away, so he's been allowed to have a lot more minutes than you'd expect. But I will say though, before just one thing before we move away from this is just I know that for Zion Sullivan, I felt really bad for him because this was his first game back from his injury, and then 20 minutes in, he falls down. I'm like, what's happened? Like, did he slip? But but you could tell it was just an injury straight off the. I was like, I was like, are you kidding me? Like this. Because he's not actually injury prone. Like this is like that was his first big injury back then, and then he got injured right. I was just like, oh, are you kidding me? So I just felt so bad for him because I see now that the Blues have announced that he's gonna be out for a month. So it just seems like he's going to be out technically for the rest of the season, I'd say. Like, he may be available, for the semis and final, depending on how the thing works. But
But you have to ask the question, did they rush him back? Did they decide this was the game that they had to have him out there on the field for? And did they risk the chance of him getting an injury? And of course, sometimes, or more times than not, we don't see a player re-injure that injured part. But this time was probably a perfect example of maybe give him a couple more weeks should have been the mindset.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
because up against a side like the Hurricanes as well, it's going to be fast-paced and that's going to be tested. And they were like, nah, we need him out there on the field, and now he's not going to be out on the field for a month.
Yeah. When you look back at it now, it was the bad decision to make. But I can understand the reasons behind doing it, because when you're against the Hurricanes, you want your best players in there, and especially against like Ruben Love and Jordy Barrett, who are known for their kicking.
Forbes has found form.
So this is what I want to talk about. Yeah, so this is the player I wanted to talk about, by the way. But I can understand the reasoning why they chose Zorn Sullivan, because he is a better kicker than Forbes. There's no doubt about that. That's what he's kind of known. That's probably his best attribute, actually, where he's a left-footed kicker, and he's really good at that. He's probably, like, maybe I'm wrong, harsh in saying this, but he probably is the best left-footer kicker in terms of, like, is there? Oh, see, I may be criticized here. I may be criticized here if there is one. I think he is. Like, I can't think of a player who's so accurate with his kicking, where he gets so many 50-22s for the Blues in the past. Like, where maybe that's a harsh. Maybe I'm wrong there. But again, he's just a great kicker. But exactly what you said, Forbes has come into this. He's been an unsung hero for the Blues really this season, because again, with him out, with Zorn been injured, kind of beforehand, and Perifetta been out for a while. So it's meant that they've had to rely on Forbes here. And man, he has stepped up. Like, he's been awesome. And the great thing is that he's actually just signed a contract extension now with the Blues, which is fully deserved up until, I think, 2026. Same with AJ Lamb, I believe. But he's been awesome. He's been awesome, Forbes. And I was really, he was. I'd like to say he was up there for the player of the match, but you got to say Harry Plummer, because he just did everything perfectly in that game in terms of his kicking, and that's really why we won. Like, usually in the past, our kicking was what let us down in terms of getting these wins, but no, Plummer did very well, executed that game perfectly. So really happy for Plummer as well, by the way, guys. But anyway, we'll move away from that game. I think the final game I kind of just want to talk about before we move into the kind of the fixtures for this week is probably that, not probably, but definitely that Highlanders Crusaders game, because that was incredible in terms of, like, just coming off what we just saw with the Blues Hurricanes. They then go into this one. I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Like, two back-to-back where it's just going try after try, same type of energy to what we just saw in Auckland. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I'm asking for. And they definitely delivered. I mean, what was your thoughts on it? Because I thought it was just a very good end-to-end game.
Yeah, it was the South Island derby everyone wanted, because, like you said, Blues versus Hurricanes happening just beforehand. There was always a bit of a concern that two slightly out of form sides going head-to-head afterwards may not quite deliver in that same kind of outcome and kind of expectation, I guess you could say, but they did. And in the end, Highlanders managing to pull off the victory. First win over a New Zealand side after, I believe it was 21 consecutive defeats. Last win that they had was in 2021. So
against the Blues,
There you go. It's been a while, but they finally got the job done. Crusaders, though, they got the bonus points, so they're still in with a shot for the quarterfinals, because this competition, everyone's a winner. And everyone can make their way through. That's all right.
That try. Like, at the very end there, you know, like that kind of the way it happens, that try where I forget who, I think it was Macca Springer who scored the last try to get them that kind of losing bonus point. It was such a weird way in how it happened. Like, do you know what I'm on about? Like, where, like, it's like, okay, you have to let go of the player. Okay, we let him go. Okay, he scored.
The thing is, I'm very surprised that doesn't happen more often, because the problem is, though, if you don't release him, you get penalised. And I was talking about it on the stream as well, because then you're in that scenario of you're pretty much at the mercy of the guy who's falling, because he will either reach out and he will score, or you'll be able to turn him to his side or something, and then you're probably going to get done for not releasing him in time, and then it's probably going to be a penalty try, you go into the bin. So it's a bit of a grey area at the moment in terms of how you can stop a player when they're that close without infringing illegally. Because, like, at the end of the day, the Highlanders did exactly what the rule says you should.
Yeah.
But then look what happens. The guy just falls down and goes, oh, well, I'm here. It's a try.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Do you think it would have been a penalty try? Because, again, you can make the argument, like just making an argument like where there was cover blocking him from going to scoring that. And again, that's where...
It depends on how they rule it, because if the TMO decides that if it wasn't for the guy not releasing, had he fallen forward, then they'd probably say it's close to the try. But then you're also in that scenario of there's also sometimes that gets called as held up, because if he's off the turf, over the line, if he's short of the line, you get done penalty try almost 9 times out of 10, because they say, oh, you get out of there, or at least a yellow card. Unless you're one of the Australian sides that we saw do it, I think it was the Brumbies, where the guy held on to the ball. The ref said, you need to release that. And he said, no, thank you. They're 1 meter out. I've got it. And no yellow card. But
the reason why I asked, by the way, is because maybe it's the wrong thinking, but I would have actually taken the risk maybe of just, like, you know what, like, here, give me sin bin. Let the Crusaders make, like, and then you get a penalty at least for the Crusaders, so they can go for at least the try themselves. But it means that there's a risk, there's like a tactical risk taking it, like where if they didn't get the try, then you've kind of saved yourself from them getting a losing bonus point, which could mean every difference. So I don't know, like, again, this is obviously a game of like kind of little edges in terms of advantages, because this, like we said, this season is going to end up as, you know, it's going down towards the wire. It's going down towards the wire, and yeah, it just makes it very great. I mean, this season's been awesome. But I do want to quickly just mention Western Force, by the way. Excellent display against the Fijian Drua. A lot of them just stood out. Ben Donaldson in particular, I thought was really good, just kind of conducting that team. Bailey Kunzel, was actually really good in that center spot. He's normally seen as like 10, but, you know, he's obviously shifted towards that kind of center spot, and he's actually done pretty well in that position. I'm trying to think who else. Like, Curly Bilge did his thing, really just kind of controlled the back line. Carlos Tizano just looking awesome. Jeremy Williams actually as well, that early try that they got. Yeah, they have some good players there. So I'm kind of hoping they make a run for the playoffs. So we'll see what happens there. But anyway, moving on then towards the fixtures for this week. In terms of, what is it now? We're on round 13 now. Round 13. Gosh, there's only, oh my gosh, we're getting close towards 3 rounds left. Jeez. Okay. Well, anyway, with the first fixture, we do have the likes of the Hurricanes versus Moana Pacifica. Again, when I look at this, it's one of those like where Hurricanes should be winning this fixture. But again, they've made a lot of changes. They've made a lot of changes to this side. And when you look at the lineups here, you know, I think there's only like Brad Shields and I guess one other player who I believe was starting in the last week's one. Like they haven't, they've made a completely kind of different team here. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one because Moana Pacifica still aren't quite in the best place. And at the start of the season, it seemed like they were going to be a lot stronger. The last time that the Hurricanes made a whole heap of changes, they did concede 28 points, but they did score 54 themselves. So it didn't really hurt them. You know, they were able to beat the Rebels relatively comfortable there. I hope that Moana Pacifica are going to show up for this game and make it a real challenge like they did in their game up against the Reds after suffering a big defeat. But it does just seem like after a loss, the Hurricanes would want redemption. It's interesting enough, though, that the Hurricanes at the moment have found themselves in a loss-win-loss situation. That is a little bit unheard of for the season, definitely because up until round 10, they were undefeated. So, you know, if the trend continues, they're going to win this one. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing how some of these guys in that starting lineup go. I think that, for me, someone to watch out for is actually Justin Sangster, which probably isn't a name that many people would say in this game, but I just like what he does as a lock. And I feel like he's had limited minutes this season, but still made a real impact throughout the season as well. Plus, he looks like Kyle Mills. Do you know who that is, Tim?
Yes, now you say it, I understand. Yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I see that now. I see that, but
you won't unsee it. Once you see it, you don't unsee it. I still see him as Kyle Mills with heat.
His face is now on the on it now, but No, I guess like like you were saying with this team, it's one of those like where the Hurricanes definitely have the stronger outlet when you look at them. They, I mean every player there can definitely do damage there. Kenny Hollow again. I thought he would do some damage from that game against the Blues. Wasn't able to do much. Didn't get his hands on the ball as much as he would like. So this is a game where I'm hoping that he can kind of take advantage of. Again, you have Sullivan there. He looked all right actually in that Blues game. So kind of hoping that he can do something here. Karifi as well. I mean, I thought he was he was all right, but again, he didn't get as many minutes as he would like in that game. So it's against the Blues, I'm talking about. So just hoping that he can do something in this one as well. But
I have a bit of a question for you, Tim.
Yeah,
Kenny Naholo, the man was on fire at the start of the season, wasn't he?
Exactly.
But now, has that fire fizzled out? And would you still have him as an option at number 11 for the All Blacks? Or do you think other players possibly have overtaken him now?
Oh,
because at the start of the season, the way that he was playing, a lot of people were saying he's going to be an All Blacks 11.
Yes.
But now, is he still there?
I don't think so. I'm just being completely honest here. When you look at the other options that have played so far and who have been, I guess, a lot more consistent than him, I just think you have to consider them more. Just because, again, it's not his fault by the way as well. Because the Hurricanes actually have a lot of good wingers. Like they have Riasi, who we were talking about earlier. They have himself in the Hollow. They have Josh Morby's having a good season. They have some good players there. So it's just one of those like where the minutes are going to go kind of around and. Yeah, he's had to deal with that. But again, like you said, he had an outstanding start to his season. But just, right now, he just hasn't kind of been able to kind of stay with that same form as what he had earlier on. But no, he's a great player. Just he's had a good season. When you look at it, you're not going to say it's a bad season for him. Overall as a season, he's at above average season for what you would expect. It's like he's been solid for them, but there's further room to grow. So it's just one of those where,
Follow-up question. Him or Caleb Clark in your AB squad?
I don't think that's even close, really. And by the way, I'm not even saying this as this is where I'm just being very neutral. Caleb Clark has had a much better season than Naholo. A much better season. Because, again, he's just been more consistent. Like, he's played, like, it's one of those, like, where I can make the argument where you have, I'm trying to think of a player who's been out for a bit, and you can make an argument to, I guess like Parafeta, for example, Parafeta's he had an impressive start to the season, but again, he was injured now, so he's only just started. We'll get into him later, but he's only just coming back now into this round. So it's one of those where if I'm comparing him to Brent Cameron, for example, for the Hurricanes, I would say Cameron's had a better season because he's played more minutes and he's been more consistent for the Hurricanes and he's been able to kind of impact the game. So it's one of those where it's not a negative thing against him. I just think that for the argument you're making for Caleb Clark versus Naholo, I just think Clark wins that easily, and I think he's definitely an automatic player for the All Blacks. So yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that's? Am I wrong in saying that, or do you think? Or are you thinking kind of the similar lines?
Well, it's interesting how quickly a year can change things, isn't it? Because Caleb Clark was a man that no one wanted to touch that All Blacks jersey. And now I feel like a lot of people are like, maybe we should have him in there, just as an option. And I know that Mark Talia, the option of him playing 11 may have also been rumoured a little bit, or whether he's out on that right wing. Amoni Narawa, whether he's an option. Maybe playing 14, Talia at 11, and then you have Clark off the bench or something like that. Sever Reese is still in there as well, so it's a pretty tough spot at the moment. I mean, Tino Nana Satora, he's another guy that, he's had a pretty good season.
Yeah, I would have him over Naholo. But that's the thing. I would have.
But would you have him over Clark?
Yes. You say Nana Satora and Clark?
Yes.
I would
Tino Nana Satora, you'd still take Clark.
But that's just because you can you can see that this has been Clark's best season for the Blues. I honestly think this has been the best season for the Blues. It's not just because you can say in previous seasons to the argument you've made with Riasi, where he's kind of been a very selfish player in the way he kind of goes for his tries. Again, Riasi had a very good season, by the way, guys. I can't remember this 2 or 3 years ago. He scored over 10 tries in one season. I was like, whoa, this guy is definitely someone that the All Blacks should be looking at. They didn't go for him, but it's just he's a great player. But again, the way he gets his tries are just kind of more individual. And yes, I can make the same argument with Caleb Clark, where early on when he kind of broke out, like he was more of an individual player, like where he would make the individual run and then set up he would run for himself and then he would set up the opportunities for the people out wide to kind of move the ball out. This time around, this season, like the one try that just comes to the mind immediately is that one try where he's been given the ball on the left wing against the Reds. He sprints down the left wing side, and he finds the perfect pass towards Sam Nock. Again, if this was like 2 years ago, Caleb Clark would have ran that. He would have actually gone for the run and kind of went for that try. And again, he just found that simple pass, 1-2, Nock scored, Blues in the game. That's all because of Caleb Clark. That's literally all because of him. So it's one of those where I just think, yeah, he's been on another level this year. Like you can even make like an argument. This is where people may go against me here because this is a big thing to say, but you can make the argument that Clark has had a better season than Talea. You can make the argument, I think. You can make that argument because I know people are going to hate me for that, but it's one of those like where I think Clark's had a really good season for the Blues. So yeah, like anyway, we'll kind of move away from that because or else people are going to be like, what is this guy on about? But
Blue supporter, eh?
Exactly. There's so much drama.
I mean, it's not so bad if you're insulting one of your teammates for another teammate, is it?
No, exactly.
Kind of still,
they're both
awesome.
They're both awesome, by the way. Like, it's like, yeah, it's really hard. We have Caleb Clark and Mark Talea. Oh gosh, so it's not a bad situation to be in. But no, again, moving on then from that Hurricanes. Well, actually, before we do, we're both saying Hurricanes to win that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just confirming there. Maybe there was a shock kind of thing like, oh, maybe Pacifica were in your mind to do something here. But again, we're moving on there towards Rebels and Chiefs. Another good game that that will be good to watch. Again, the Rebels, they've been a bit lackluster, I'd say, throughout the last few weeks. Kind of again, that performance against the Reds actually was pretty impressive. Like I said, that first half, they actually showed a bit of kind of grit. Actually, I thought kind of get that lead earlier on, but again, they let it slip. So I'm kind of hoping that. I hate to say it, but I'm hoping they can get that lead once again earlier on because when you're against the Chiefs, you need to kind of get tries early on, kind of stop them from doing anything. But hey, the Chiefs are just they're on a different planet at the moment because they've just been in great form recently. They've just blown teams away, so it's pretty tough to go against them, I'd say. But what's your take on this? Because it's going to be a good game no matter what.
It's a tricky one, this one. Only because the Chiefs, on paper, should win this game comfortably.
Yes.
But I just have a weird feeling it could be a little bit closer.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not it's the fact that Nick Berry's refereeing. No offense to that man, but, we've seen it before.
That's the first one you just look at, Nick Berry. Oh, okay, we're in for something.
It's the thing that sticks out like a sore thumb in this game because... with it being in Australia, you just get concerned, You wonder what's going to happen. Is the penalty count just going to go insane against the Chiefs and then the Rebels just start to roll a little bit?
Yeah.
They haven't got Taniela Tupou. Of course, he is out again, unfortunately. And this one wasn't even really his doing. He just took a head knock, which is a bit of a shame. It's better that way, I guess, than his legs given out like they normally do. But that man's just... He's probably, I want to say he's the Manu Tuolangi of Super Rugby at the moment. In terms of every time you think he's going to have a really good crack at it, something snaps and then he's gone. And, of course everyone's going to remember him because he is that massive Tongan Thor in the front row and anytime he comes back, people are hyped about it. But, it's just, he's got to try and avoid some of those injuries or else even the Wallabies might be a little bit more like, is it worth that risk? But, this Chiefs side, it's looking pretty handy. Even the Rebels, like, in terms of their starting lineup, you look through it then and you see some superstars in the making. So, it's going to be a good game. No Andrew Callaway for this game for the Rebels, I think might hurt them a little bit.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And I'm going to say the Chiefs are going to win it.
Just simple as that, really. Simple
as that.
You don't think, but you do think it will be a close game or not?
I don't like follow-up questions, Tim. I'd prefer to just say the Chiefs. It's a hard one. It could go either way. It could either be 25 points or maybe 7.
But isn't Callaway playing, by the way? Because I have it up here that Callaway is playing at 15.
Who's he playing?
Maybe I'm wrong on this, by the way, guys. But I see Callaway
no
is playing.
Callaway.
Okay, well, if
Who,
he
who
is
you
playing
got? Who you got at 15? You got Strawn or you got Callaway?
I've Callaway here for what I'm looking at.
Oh, okay. See, I'm on the Super Rugby website and they got Jake Strawn as the number 15. But are you on the Rebels Instagram?
Well, I'm on Super B. I'm also on Super B.
Well, how's that work then? If we've
I
got
don't
the
know how
same
it works.
website with different
This
blokes.
website, yeah. It's you know what? Maybe it's the location in Hong Kong. They showed us Andrew Callaway.
We're gonna have to Google this now, aren't we?
Exactly.
Rebels Facebook.
Just
No,
check the Insta, yeah. Like
I don't
I'll just check the
Rebels
Insta right now.
Sport.
Because this will impact the decision, actually, I think, for me.
It will, because now if it's not Strawn, then
Rebels, no.
right, here we go. The back three. No, that's the front three. Team this week. No, that's the wrong one.
Doesn't even show the team here.
We're not even going to edit this out. There we go. Jake Strawn, number 15. It would seem by the Rebels.
He's a 15. Okay. Wow. That's weird. Why is it showing?
Super Rugby set you up, Tim.
Gosh, Super B, the same site we're looking at, just for some reason has different names. But anyway, I'm gonna probably also agree with you that I'm gonna favor the Chiefs. Again, they have Stevenson back, which is probably the big addition for them. Having him, Nana Satiro, and Amoni Narwa, like that's very, very dangerous. Probably like you could make a case that's probably the best back three in the comp. Like that's you can make that argument. I think it's a very strong one to make. But yeah, we'll go with the Chiefs for this game. I just think that they're going to be too strong. But again, moving away from this game now, we'll move on then towards Fiji and Drua against the Reds. This is going to be a very important game in terms of the kind of the battle for that kind of 7-8 position, because Fiji and Drua here, they've come off they've come off 2 losses away, and they're coming back home now, which is a good thing for them because normally they do pretty well at home. But it's one of those where the Reds, they're a team which you can't really underestimate here because they can surprise teams, and they've done this throughout the year. And it's one of those where I would like to think the Reds can do something here, but at the same time, they lost one of their key players in Harry Wilson now. He's actually unfortunately out for the remainder of the season now. So that is a very big blow to them. But again, with saying that, they actually have the return of Sururu, who's coming off the bench, I believe. So it's a good addition to kind of maybe it counteracts it. I don't know. But yeah, look, it's in Fiji. So Fiji and Drua are definitely going into this, I think, as the favorites. I think every game they're seen as the favorites at home. But yeah, what's your thoughts on this? Because I think it's going to be a nail biter on the watch.
Well, that's the thing. The gap between the Drua and the Highlanders now, who are in 7th, that's starting to get a lot bigger. 6 points difference between those two sides. So the Drua, the gap between them and the team who are trying to get into the top 8, only the 2 points. And in fact, like I mentioned, every single team theoretically can be in that 8th position at the end of this round. Like, if results go the right way. So, the Drua, how many more home games have they got? I know they're playing the Rebels at home as well. Is another game that they have got.
And they play the Highlanders next week away.
And that's going to be away. So this is a must-win, because if they go 1 from 2 of their last 2 weeks, I don't know if that's going to be enough to keep them in that top 8.
I agree.
Even though there are some tough oppositions for certain sides. I mean, the Crusaders certainly do not have an easy run towards those playoff games. Moana Pacifico, I know this sounds harsh, but I don't consider them as an option for that top 8 anymore.
I
just
agree.
because, yes, they can pull off upsets every once in a while, but, it's just going to be very difficult. The Force probably could be a decent
This is the team I'm thinking of, by the way.
To be honest,
I think the Western
looking at the
Force
way they finish.
Yeah, you're going to have to worry about the Force. I think they're the only team, I believe, that can still challenge the Fiji and Drua. But the problem in saying that, though, is that Fiji and Drua, like you said, if they win this game against the Reds, I think they're in the playoffs. I think maybe it's a too early thing to say. But
even if the Force beat the Tars this week as well, keeping that same 2-point gap between them.
Because the way I see this, by the way, and we're looking at the Western Force fixtures here, they play in the Waratahs this week, which I think they're going to win that comfortably, in my opinion. They have the Brumbies, I believe, at home for the final round, and they have the Reds away for the one after this week. So I believe they can win. This may be a big call, but I think they can actually win 2 out of 3 of those games. So it's one of those where the Western Force can definitely go ahead of the Fiji and Drua in my books. But the problem when saying that, though, is that that also means that the Fijian Drua can only win one out of their next three. So it's one of those where I think this is the game that decides it for me, because I think that Fijian Drua will beat the Rebels at home. I think they will do that. It's just this game where it's going to come down to it. And again, the Highlanders, you could say also the same thing for the Highlanders game, but I just think, the Fijian Drua just haven't been the same team when they're facing away. So that's why I said the Highlanders kind of back them for that one, I'd say. But for this one, I think, the decider. Similar to what I said last week, by the way, for the Highlanders Crusaders. Like I said, whoever wins that game, they're going to make the playoffs. If Fijian Drua win this game, they're going to make the playoffs. That's the way I see it. But I hope, actually, this may be a harsh thing to say to all the Fijian fans that are watching. I want the Western Force to make it, because I think that they've been. I want them to kind of. They've had a late surge, and I like a lot of their players. Like a lot of their players have stepped up now, and it's kind of cool. They have a lot of good talent there. So I'm kind of just like hoping that they do pretty well. So yeah, no, and again, they're just a great team. But again, Fijian Drua they're awesome. So you can't really say no. You can't really not hate them. But yeah, I mean, look. Well, I mean, what's your thoughts on this one? Because I think it can go either way. Honestly, this one can go either way.
We should clarify. Tim means you can not hate them, rather than I think you ended up saying that like you can't not hate them in terms of
hate them. The Fijian Drua.
The way you said it sounded like you were saying that you should hate the Fijian.
No. Fijian Drua has been a team I think I've said this previously in the past. Like my team has always been the Blues, but you can make the argument everyone's second team is Fijian Drua because they're just so awesome to watch. So it's one of those where, I'm never going to be against them in terms of supporting them. It's just more, I think, for the circumstances of the season, it'd be cool to see the Western Force kind of make a late surge. But look, for this game, however, I just think it's one of those where the Fijian Drua, I don't know. Do you think they can do it?
It's a tricky one because, the only side that has beaten them when they've been at home has been the Hurricanes. Everyone else that we think should have a good chance have failed. And even if that's down to Golden Point or whether that's going right down to the wire in another way, like they still seem to get the job done. I've had a crazy thought. I was just looking through at the table in terms of who's got what points, right? Yeah. And it's actually possible with how we're sitting, if any of those sides in the bottom four get themselves 3 wins from 3 in their final 3 rounds, they actually have potential of jumping up to maybe even 6th or 7th on the table by the end of this round. Because looking at the Melbourne Rebels,
exactly. As I said, the Rebels,
they currently, they're going to be playing the Chiefs, and if they lose that, then they've got the Brumbies at GIO Stadium, and if they lose that, they've got the Fijian Drua in Fiji. If they lose all 3 of their games, they will only be on around that 26-27 for just argument's sake. I'm not saying it's going to happen before people get angry. If the Crusaders were to go 3 wins from 3 from where they are, they could possibly be sitting somewhere around that 27-ish points if they, end up playing well. So there are chances that some certain sides, like I honestly think with the way that the competition is laid out with these last few rounds, I think that the Rebels may miss out and the Force may get in. That is one of the things that I think could end up happening here. But the thing is, that's not even involving the Fijian Drua because they will still be lurking around somewhere in that 8th spot. I just think that with the finish for the Rebels, it's a tough one. And they've got to make sure they get at least the 1 win there. I think that the Rebels versus Drua, that final round, just to keep on throwing predictions out there, I think that's going to decide who finishes 8th in the competition.
You're saying Drua versus the Rebels?
Drua versus Rebels, that final game between the two sides. And it's going to, that's the thing. And then maybe Force versus Brumbies, if the Rebels or the Fijian Drua win, Force versus Brumbies may also be such an important game. But
I think it's one of those where when I'm looking at these fixtures more, the more you're saying, I'm like, that's a possibility because I think,
and I feel bad for saying it because the Rebels started so well, but then they did only play Australian sides at the start. So if they beat a New Zealand team, the Rebels, did they beat the Highlanders? I think they did.
I think the Rebels, they beat the Highlanders.
Yeah, and then that's the only New Zealand opposition they've beaten, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. They've got wins over the. Who have they beaten? They've been the.
Have they played the Crusaders? Yeah, they did. They got demolished, didn't they?
That was the
31-0.
worst. That was their worst one.
Yeah.
That was the worst game they've played. They've beaten the who have they beaten? They beat Modern Pacifica. I know they beat them away. They beat
They beat the Force in round 2.
Force around 2.
They beat Moana Pacifica.
They beat Fiji and Drua. They beat Fiji and Drua at home. I think that's the 4 wins right there. That's the 4 that they've got.
Oh, and they beat the Tars in week 6. So that must be the 5 that they've got. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they've had some good wins. I mean, again, the most notable one probably being that I'd say that Highlanders one. That was probably their best performance out of the bunch, I'd say. But yeah, look, I think if you were to say, and this is obviously just hypothetical, guys, but if you were to say the Rebels do miss out, it would mean the Western Force would have to win all 3 of their games. That's the only way I see it happening. Because when I'm looking at the Rebels kind of points here, I don't think they can get this is also just being this is hypothetical. That we'll just go into what I think.
It's such a tricky one to describe, isn't it? Because there's so much.
I don't think they'll get a losing bonus point against the Chiefs. I don't think they'll get a losing bonus point against the Rebels, or sorry, against the Brumbies, but they can get a losing bonus point against the Fiji and Drua. So it's one of those where I can only see them getting 1 extra points out of those last 3 games. So that only take them up to 26 points. But then for the Western Force, even if they win, they get a winning bonus point this round against the Waratahs, which is highly possible. They'll go up to 20, I think 20 right there. Then you have the Reds next week, which is that's a key one. That's a very key game for them because that's one of those where that's going to, in my opinion, that's a harder game than the game against the Brumbies at home. That's a harder game because it's tough to beat the Reds away in Queensland. So that's the game that could decide their season, in my opinion. So if they win that one, then they have something. They could do it. But again, like I said, this all comes down towards what happens with the Rebels, as well as what happens in this game for the Fiji and Drua Reds game. But I guess in terms of just my prediction for this one, I will sway it towards the Fiji and Drua. I just think when I'm also looking at this Reds lineup here, it isn't the strongest lineup. Again, they do have Tim McDermott who's starting, which is a good thing for them. But when you look at the other players, they've made some kind of switches in there with Aubrey there in the number 11. They have Adaman, who I've never heard of here, the number 13 spot. They have Brian there, number 8. Again, obviously with Wilson now, who we've already clarified. They have Daly there, the number 5 spot. So they've made some substitutions there. And even Tim Ryan isn't even starting this one. So they have a really good bench, though, actually, when I look at it. They got Kai Thomas, James O'Connor, Tim Ryan, Uru, Tuma Allen. They have some good bench players there. But, it's going to be a good one. It is going to be a good one. But, yeah, I mean, I assume which way are you going? Drua or the Reds?
I'm actually going to go the Reds for this one.
Oh, that's a big one. Okay.
Just to throw a spanner in the works. Plus, I'm very good in the 7 side of things at jinxing teams. So I'm wondering if that will work here. If I say that the Fiji and Drua are going to lose, maybe it will help them win, and then they'll get into that top 8. Yeah,
fair enough. But again, for the following game, we do the likes of the Brumbies versus the Crusaders. Again, this is one where I think this is one of those games where you would like to think there's something up for grabs here in this game, but it's weird. I actually think this is one of those games where there's not really much to play for. Because I think the Crusaders are in a position where, yes, they can still obviously play for something and go targeting the playoffs here, but they have to win all 3 of the games now. They have to win this game, they have to win against the Blues at home, and they have to win against Modern Pacific at home. So if you want a chance at the playoffs, you have to win all 3 games. It's possible. It's definitely possible. You can never really count out the Crusaders, but just what we've seen throughout this year, they just have not been the same team as what we've seen in previous years. So I just don't know what really the thing about them really at this point. And again, the Brumbies have just been on another level, just have been very, very good this year, very consistent. And particularly at home, they've been a very good side. So it's going to be a tough one for them.
Exactly right. And the tricky part here is we don't know what's going to happen in this game. Exactly. Because the Crusaders, they might play good rugby, or they might not. And the Brumbies, I think one thing's for sure is the Brumbies, I can see them getting in the 20s on the scoreboard. Somewhere around that 25, 26, 28, somewhere around there, I believe, It's whether or not the Crusaders can get more than that and work their way into the 30s, or whether they come up short. I can see them getting a losing bonus point in this game if they don't.
As I said, I think that's what's going to happen. Yeah, I think both teams will be in the 20s. That's the way I'll put it. I think both teams will make it to the 20s because I think the Crusaders, like, they actually did pretty well in terms of like getting that losing bonus point at the end against the Highlanders. So I think they definitely have the capability of doing it again against the Brumbies. But and again, the Brumbies are a very kind of open team, at least in how they kind of attack teams. Like they obviously, if you're going to put it like in football terms, like they go on the counter attack. But with that, it means that there's space open for them to kind of target in terms of for the Crusaders. So. And they're lethal. The Crusaders are lethal. They have Super Rugby, the top try scorer of the season so far with 11. I mean, Che Funaki had a good game against Funaki. Had a good game against the Highlanders. So yeah, you can't really count them out. But
and the return of Fergus Burke, number 10.
Great, yeah. That'll be the interesting one. That will be the interesting one. I just can't. It's just still weird to think that he's going. He's going off to the Saracens next year, and again, it hasn't been confirmed in terms of like who he's going to represent, if it's England or Scotland, because that's kind of the big reason why. I assume he's obviously making this choice. I'm hoping it's Scotland. Because it just makes it great for the future, and he's a great player, by the way, guys. Great player if you haven't seen him play. So I'm hoping it's Scotland he chooses, not England, because England have enough players. Scotland would be awesome, but yeah, look, we'll see. I just have to be fair here. I'm going to say the Brumbies win this. I'm going to say the Brumbies win. Yourself?
You
want to go with the outside shout?
Well, I was hoping you'd say the Crusaders so that I could pick the Brumbies, you see.
You know what? I actually don't mind picking the Crusaders here. I think this is one of those games where it's going to be very open. So you know what? I'll switch my stance on this. I'll say the Crusaders because this one can really go either way, guys. I think either way. So I'll go the Crusaders for this one.
Too easy. I'll take the Brumbies. Yeah. No, we'll see how it goes. Like, honestly, like you said, it's going to be hopefully split within 7 between the two sides. And of course, bonus points are great, but for the Crusaders, they need much more than that at this stage of the season. The Brumbies arguably need much more than that if they want to secure that home quarter final. I know that they can still stay up there, but the likes of the Reds, if they get themselves to win over the Drua, all of a sudden they're a lot closer to being able to take one of those top 4 spots.
Yeah.
The good news is we're at least going to have one game taking place outside of New Zealand in the semi-finals, or sorry, the quarterfinals. Because for a second there, it looked like maybe we'd see 4 New Zealand sides sneaking their way up there, but the Highlanders, unless something crazy happens, I don't think we're going to see them.
I don't want to. This is an outside shout here, but there is actually a possibility. I'm just saying, there's a possibility that even the Brumbies could overtake the Hurricanes in terms of getting towards that second place.
You getting all cocky, Tim, after you beat them once.
No. I've only said this. I'm looking at the fixtures, by the way, here, guys, because the Hurricanes have to play the Chiefs away. That's that's a game they can lose. Like, and kind of going back to what you said, like where they've lost a game, won a game, lost a game, they're going to win this week. They could lose the following week, so it could be that kind of order that you're mentioning earlier. So it's one of those where if they did lose that game, again, I suspect it's not going to be a bonus point win for the Chiefs. So it'll be like by losing bonus points. So if they get that, then they'll go up to what 44 points. Well, they'll go what 5? I'd say this week, maybe just realistically 5. So they'll get like 48 points, and then they'll go up to get the extra 1. Then that would be, that would be 49. And then who did they play the last week? They play the Highlanders. That's probably going to be a 5, I'd probably say. So it's probably going to be what? That's 54 points they may end up on. And then the Brumbies, however, let me just check their fixtures. They have Crusaders this week. They could win that. Again, it goes either way. But I'm going to say, if I'm giving my honest prediction, I think the Brumbies will win this. But again, I'm back at the Crusaders, but I think the Brumbies will win, so I'm going to say could be a 5, I'd say. Rebels, that could be a 5. Force, that's one where that could hurt them. See, that's probably the decider one. I don't know what's going to happen in that one because the Force are just on a good momentum at the moment, so that could hurt their chances. But if they got 5-5 in this week and the following week, then they're in the conversation, maybe overtaking them. But anyway, we'll see what happens.
On the other hand, if the Blues lost 3 games in a row to New Zealand sides, there'd be a chance that maybe they would be a little bit further down.
And we can lose, by the way. Like the Blues can still. Yeah, you're totally right. The Blues, like I think this week I feel pretty confident we'll win against the Highlanders. But again, the next 2 weeks, oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, whenever we're facing the Crusaders away, I'm just like, geez, I don't really want to watch this game because they just turn it up another level when it's the Blues, especially. And again, we're facing the Chiefs at home, so. Yeah, whenever the Chiefs come to Auckland, it's always a tight game, so it can go either way. So yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the challenge. But again, moving on then from that Brumbies Crusaders game, we do have the Blues Highlanders game here. This is one where the Blues have made several changes to the squad. Not their kind of like their best lineup to say the least. They've kind of rested a few players here with the likes of Tupoloto, Riccatelli. Hoskins to Tutu being the big one. They don't have Mark Talea as well. They've made some key kind of changes there. But again, they have some good faces. They have some fresh faces there. Good to see Lachlan McWano back in this side. He's had a very good season. Derry there, there'll be a good lock combination. There's a Kira there, number 8, filling in for Tutu. Who else? They got Corey Evans there at the 12. Bryce Heem at the 13. That's interesting. They have a good side. And again, the great thing is to see Stephen Perifetta off the bench. So I'm excited to see how kind of again. This is where I hope they're making the smarter move here, at least compared to Sullivan, where they're putting him off the bench first and then giving him a few minutes. But man, if he gets injured, I'm just gonna be like, gosh, I'm gonna hate it. But anyway, I'm not trying to jinx it. But I hope he has a good game, Perifetta. But what's your thoughts on this? Because it'll be good.
Well. The Highlanders are looking handy enough out there on the field at the moment. I really enjoyed watching Cameron Miller at number 10 for them in that game up against the Crusaders. His kicking was phenomenal. Yeah. When he had to try and line up those last kicks, and he just seemed to be as calm as he could be, as if he was just kicking them out on the field with his mates. Just lining up the kick in front of 20,000 and just getting it straight through the post. I feel like his performance alone in terms of off the kicking tee was one of the main reasons that the Highlanders won that game. You've got to make sure you're taking the points when they're available and making the most of them. And I honestly think this game might be a little bit closer than some are anticipating. Now, that's not to say that if the Blues start rolling that this won't be a similar scoreline to what we saw between the Blues and the Crusaders earlier on in the season. But I honestly think that the Highlanders are going to be right in it. And I'm going to go bold here, and only because I know that you love telling me that I'm wrong when I don't back the Blues. I'm going to say the Highlanders win this game.
I feel like, honestly, for the last 5 weeks, I think you've backed the opposition to the Blues.
And look how happy you've been each and every time. You've been waiting to tell me all about it. I think you are right with this, by the way. I think the Highlanders are definitely going to this with a stronger kind of outfit overall. And again, like you said, Miller was outstanding in that game for the Highlanders. It's kind of, I think the big one, which I'm keen to hear your thoughts on it, because I've always liked this. I've always liked him a lot, but he recently hasn't been starting for the Highlanders, and you can make the argument they've been a better side without him starting Sam Gilbert, because he was really good for the Highlanders last year, by the way, like really good. Yeah. And in my opinion, he actually was filling kind of that role when he shifted, because he was playing. Was he playing 15 or 10 last year? I think he was playing at 10 most of the time last year. But he's been shifting towards that 12 spot from earlier this season. And I felt like, this could be like another kind of like regen, this at least, of like Jody Barrett in a way, kind of a similar kind of profile in terms of how he's a fly half kind of / fullback, kind of going towards that 12 spot. I was like, okay, we could be on to something here. But no, he's just been he hasn't been kind of starting games, I believe, for the last like 3 or 4 weeks now. So that's a big call to make, because he's a great player, I think. But again, it's turned out pretty well for them actually, because the Highlanders have been in a good form recently. Well, we actually both picked him in our top 5 in terms of the best centres in the competition. In fact, I think I had him number 1 and you might have had him number 2.
Number 2.
Oh, no. We might have both had him 2, because I think Osefo Masi got that number 1 spot.
Yeah, it had to be Masi. But he was up there.
He was up there. Crazy. He was doing well. Jake Tahiwi, he looks all right, but I don't know whether or not it's going to hurt them at some stage. You've got Gilbert there, but maybe it's just for a little bit of fly half cover off the bench as well. Might be the main reasoning behind it, just to have that kicking option late in a game. They haven't really got too many other choices that they could go with, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes in this contest. But Corey Evans, I think the last time that he played at 12 for the Blues, he actually didn't look too bad. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
I can't actually remember the last time he played.
I think it was about I think it was in the first 5 rounds. I can't remember which game it was. Could have been Moana Pacifica.
Yeah,
that he got the chance. I think he came off the bench as well in a couple other games.
Oh yeah, he's definitely come off the bench. I just can't remember the games where he started because again we have Bryce Keane kind of filling that role, and it's he's actually been a great player for the Blues. Really good player. Again, he's obviously at a very old age now. I think he's like what 34 or 35.
Very old age. That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
Hey, no, he's incredible player. He's awesome for his age. That's if you want me to say
awesome
that way.
He's for his age. That's awesome, still not much better.
Mate, I talked to my dad about this. Like, I honestly would even consider him like I would put him in the conversation of like I think it was last year. I was like, oh, he's in the conversation, say for the All Blacks. Like he's had a great year. He's had an awesome year. But yeah, he's just been a really good servant to the Blues. And it's interesting. I mean, this is obviously a big kind of hypothetical here, a very big hypothetical. But I do see he's making his debut for the first time for the Blues here. Mason Tupaya here, coming off the bench here for the Blues. And again, he is the brother of Quinn Tupaya. And I'm just thinking, maybe that would be an awesome player for the Blues. If Quinn Tupaya, if he were to join his brother to come to the Blues, I would absolutely love that because I think I've raved about this guy for such a long time in terms of how good he is, and I think I've had this discussion with you. I think you know how much I like him as a player. I've talked about him a lot in the past, and I felt so bad for him when he got injured. Really, because he was literally in the All Blacks. Like he was actually a starter at that time. But again, when Ian Foster kind of figured out, hey, let's put Jody at 12. Let's see if that works. And bam, that was like the missing piece. Really, then it kind of hurt his chances going forward. But man, he's a heck of a player. Quinty Paul, he's had a good in last few games. He's been really impressive for the Chiefs. So I'm just saying, if there's ever a way, kind of like I don't know, sprinkle some fairy dust or kind of wish upon a star, then man, that's a player I would select for the Blues. If I had to take a player from another team, I'd take him and probably I don't know, like a prop maybe because we're kind of light in that department, I'd say now. But
you just got Mason Tupaya, his brother. He won't like you saying
no,
that.
No, but I know we're gonna lose. I believe what's his name? Well, we haven't had Lay. That's the other one. We've had Jordan Lay. We haven't had Jordan Lay because he's been injured for a while. So it's one of those where I thought the Blues just need an extra prop there because we have Alpha, we have Marcel Renetta, both of them good. We have who's the other one? We have Fusatia and Angus Talvo. And Angus Talvo has been really good this year for the Blues. But I just think we need to come more of a younger prop. I don't know who I'd have in mind. Like I can't really think of anyone at the moment. Is there someone you can think of? Like, I just again, this is all hypothetical.
In terms of poaching from another team,
like if there was a player, like again, like oh, you know what? Actually, to be fair, there was a rumor. It was a rumor, of course, but there was a rumor that Ethan de Groot, the Blues were looking at him earlier on this season. Before the season started. But again, I think that kind of fell through in a way. I don't know what happened there, but anyway, kind of going off track there with hypotheticals here, but I will say the Blues will win this. So I'm gonna go with the Blues to win. But again, moving away from that game, we're going off towards the final one, which is the Force versus the Wartars. And yeah, this is probably the one where I'd say it's gonna be a bonus point city for the Western Force. I don't see any way the Wartars win this game. I'm just being completely honest here. The Wartars have had. I've been very, very unfortunate this season in terms of the amount of injuries they've had. I think that you could make a case they've had the worst amount of injuries this year in terms of the Super Rugby side because they've lost 4 of their first-choice hookers who are all contracted to the club. 4 of their first-choice hookers. They've lost 7 of their props, which is a remarkable thing to say. And they've had Pom Famawasi, who's been loaned to the Wartars. But of course, because Tino Tupo is out this week, he's now going back to the Rebels to start for them. So it's like, it's crazy. I see that they brought this. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but I was reading an article about him. They brought this Argentinian, from is it Glasgow or it's somewhere from the Premiership to come down and help him out just for this kind of a few games here. So they're kind of scrappy for players in this position. So I feel bad for them because I think it's Darren Coleman, if I'm mistaken, the coach there. He has a tough job there with the Waratahs. But again, you also have to look bright, I guess, in the long term, because the Waratahs, going forward, they have kind of a good setup actually going, because they're bringing in Andrew Kellaway. They're still kind of getting him from the Rebels. That's a really good signing. They'll have Joseph Sawali coming in there from the NRL, so that's a big one. I haven't seen him play, guys, so I don't know how that's going to go. If that'll turn out to be a success or not, because again, I've been very kind of critical actually in terms of kind of going down towards that league route. I don't think that's the right way they should be going, because I think I can't remember he got taken away. Is it Keller? Something like the head of the RA from Rugby Australia, but he was the one kind of going towards that league route, kind of like trying to bring league players towards Super Rugby. But they gave him, I think, a contract of 1.2, I believe. Justice Wally, they play for 3 years. It's one of those where I think that you could have spent that better in terms of players kind of signing for contracts here within Super Rugby. I mean, there's Max Jorgensen, Tom Wright, I believe, and who else? Who's the other players? Kellaway, I think they're all contracted, at least up until next year, I believe. But I mean, there's players like Jock Campbell, who hasn't been, I guess, signed on yet, or I think even Jordan Bataille, actually. So there's ways you can better spend that money. So, but again, I for what I hear, he's a heck of a player. So I'm excited to see what he can do. But I know recently that the Waratahs also announced they're losing Ned Hannigan and Will Harrison as well. Ned Hannigan's leaving to France, Will Harrison leaving to Japan. So yeah, they're losing players here. But hey, they've been able to step up. I know Parisi's also leaving towards Leicester. But again, they have Joey Walton to kind of cover him, and he's had a good season for the Waratahs. So they have a future ahead of them, I think. They have a future ahead of them. But yeah, this year it's been tough for them. It's been tough. But yeah, what's your thoughts? Because I've gone too long there.
Well, if they can avoid any front row blunders, they've still got a decent side taken to the park, the Waratahs, and maybe I'm just waiting for the Western Force to have a game that, because they're at such an important point of the season, every once in a while nervousness comes into it and you start to overthink it. You're thinking about the table rather than thinking about the game in front of you. And I don't think that'll be this game. To be fair to the Waratahs, they fought really hard in some terrible conditions up against the Brumbies, and they were still able to keep it close. They just missed out on that bonus point, which I think will be a little bit of one that hurts them. But yeah, I can see the Force winning this game, but I can also, I can see the Waratahs just digging deep and trying to keep it a little bit closer in this game, to be honest. It's hard to say because they are in a struggle city, as you called it, but who knows? Super Rugby this year, the one thing that we've learned is it's unpredictable. And when you think you're starting to get the hang of it, when you're 17th in the world on your Super Brew, all of a sudden, a curveball, 19th. Ooh.
I wish it was 17th. Would have been nicer, but yeah.
Who's 17th? Do you know their name? Is it 2 cents?
No. I don't look at the names. Jeez, 2 cents. You think you would be there? I don't know. I mean,
you're firing shots. Firing shots, or you saying he's going to be higher?
To be fair, 2 cents. If you're watching, you always does the predictors in terms of the score lines and all that. And to be fair, that's not where really my area of expertise really is, because I normally just go for the outrageous ones in terms of I got the kind of outside bet there with, I guess, if you said last week, Western Force beating the Fijian Jura or something like that. So it's I go for those kind of things, but no, I'm pretty good at fantasy. That's kind of the area of my expertise, and I like to think that's where I'll crack into that top 10. That's my aim for this year. To be fair, I'm not sure if you see this, but I post it on my community. I post my team.
I have seen those. Yeah, I've never known what they were for a start. You'll show certain players, and I'm like, okay, cool. I don't do fantasy, so I don't know. I just saw my track record. I'm like, because I was considering doing a whole fantasy thing around doing
videos, but just been like I asked people just early on, guys, like, if they wanted to see this, and it was like, look, or I can just do it this way, where I just show you guys in the community, and everyone just kind of voted the community route. So I was like, yeah, all good. So that's why I just posted on there. But yeah, I think for this one, are you edging your way towards the Warthogs or for the outside shot, or are you going to stick with, or are you going to go with the Western Force as well?
Yeah, I feel like at this point our predictions have gone all over the place for the season.
Yeah,
it's gone out the window.
Has.
So I'm just going to back the Tars then.
Oh, good on you, man. Good on you. There you go, guys. Tars, you're in luck there. Yeah, it's a lucky charm with them. But anyway, we'll move away there from Super B. That is the end of kind of that's kind of the final thing we just want to talk about quickly is everything around Sam Cane and his decision around kind of stepping down as All Blacks captain. It's a big one because this really kind of changes the, I guess, kind of landscape of what the All Blacks going forward in terms of that leadership group. It's fascinating because just to give you a bit of context, Sam Cane has signed a 3-year. He's extended his contract with Santoris and Goliath for another 3 years. So by the time he ends that contract in 2027, he'll be 35 years old. So it's kind of a last move for him, I'd say, within his career. And it's one of those where it's a big decision to make. And he just hasn't been available this year in terms of, rugby-wise. He had that injury very early on in the season. So it's one of those where, is there a case where even he doesn't even get selected for this kind of July internationals? Like maybe he gets selected for, I believe, well, for what I've seen reports-wise, he kind of has a similar timeline towards Will Jordan where both of them could be available for the Rugby Championship, but not for the July internationals for the England test and the Fiji one. So it's interesting. But yeah, what's your take first on Sam Cane? Because I think it's an interesting one.
Well, it is an interesting one because we talked about it on one of the streams recently as well. As a rugby player, you've only got a certain window where you can make your money, where you can set yourself up. And Sam Cane, he's had a very long and very strong career at times, but also an injury-plagued career as well. And as you start getting older, we're seeing it now. He's starting to pick up a few more injuries. And unfortunately, I still say it most times, he's only one big head knock away from retirement. Mm-hmm. And the good news in terms of Japan playing in the Japanese league is he's going to get a little bit more longevity, and he's also probably going to get paid a little bit more handsomely than he would if he was playing for the Chiefs or if he was even playing for the All Blacks. That's the thing. At the moment, there are certain players who are slowly falling out of love for international rugby, not because they don't want to play it, but because they know that there are better opportunities elsewhere. Leicester Nuku. Perfect example. He pretty much said, don't get me wrong, I like playing for the All Blacks, but the reason I'm playing rugby is to try and set up my family. So I'm going to take the big money in France because that is where I can make the most money, and I can also avoid those brutal injuries that can take you out for a season. Yeah. And, Sam Cane, I'll be honest, it's a tricky one because he's one of the most bashed in terms of like social media and in terms of like people talking about the All Blacks. He's one of the most talked about players for pretty much the wrong reasons. And you got to feel for him. But then he was red carded in that World Cup final. He was red carded in the Chiefs versus Crusaders final. It's those certain moments when you need him to step up that he wasn't able to. But people, even now, the conversations of, is he going to be in the All Blacks? Is he going to miss out? A lot of people don't want to see him there. And to be honest, I think that Razor should now look at this as, okay, we either need him in here for the experience, or we've got to say it's now time to make that switch and try and get ready for that future. Because, of course, we've got a long term under Razor. At least everyone wants it to be. But that depends on how the results go. We could see it go one way, and that is success, or we could see it go the other, and maybe people aren't so keen on him anymore. But I think that for Sam Cane, it's the right decision. In a way, you've got so many people constantly slating you that you might as well say, it's similar to Ian Foster, you might as well say, oh, look at all these funny comments while I'm sitting in my mansion. So at the end of the day, Sam Cane, it's the right move.
Yeah.
Thankless being the skipper in a time where everyone was still talking mad trash about him.
Yeah.
Yes, he did some things a little bit shaky at times, but at the end of the day, you can tell that he plays the game because he loves it.
He's a heck of a player.
And
Like he has 95 test hits, damn. That's remarkable. Like you don't to have 95, like you could tell he's a very good player. It's just one of those where, like you say, he's just you can't rely on it on every moment because he has injuries in and out. So it's just one of those where unfortunately he's kind of let himself down in that kind of area, and that's meant that other players have got to step up in terms of a leadership role. But it's tough. And again, like you said, there's other players kind of looking in towards that 7th spot as well, which we've discussed within this episode. So yeah, it's gonna be fascinating to see what happens there. But of course, just in line with that, with Sam King kind of announcing that he's going to step down as captain, who do you believe will be the kind of one to kind of take that mantle? Because I've recently did a video on this literally today, and I've kind of named 3 players that I believe were in the conversation, or should be talked about at least, that Razor will consider. One being the obvious in Scott Barrett, because they've worked under each other under the Crusaders. The other one being Artur Sevilla, because he is just a player that he leads by example and has proven that throughout his career, really. And then the other one, which is really more of an outside shout compared to the other 2, but I said Patrick Tuipulotu, but just because he's done well from a captaincy standpoint with the Blues and that. And I said, like, for me to even consider a player, you have to be a captain at a Super Rugby level. I just feel like if you don't even have that, then I'm not even going to consider you, because it's one of those where you have to have experience from a leadership standpoint to understand to break into that leadership group for the All Blacks and to be the captain. That's the other thing. So I felt that's the reason why I included Tuipulotu in that conversation. But again, when you're going against the likes of Sevilla and Barrett, it's tricky. And by the way, I'm not saying Tuipulotu, he can definitely get it. I just think that more people, of course, spoken about Sevilla and Scott Barrett. So yeah, I mean, this is the big question for you. I mean, who do you think will take over? Like, who do you think is the I can phrase this in 2 ways. I can say, who do you want to be the captain? And then who do you think Razor will choose? They can be both the same, by the way. But just who, for both those, who would you say?
Well, the thing with Scott Barrett is you're probably going to end up with a very similar situation to Sam Cane.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, Scott Barrett, he's a physical player, and he'll go out there and he'll hit some men hard, and he'll put in the big shots, but he also loves the card.
Yep.
And, it's all well and good being the captain, but if you're sitting on the sideline with a red, you're not really captaining nothing. Yeah. So I think that Savi is a good shout, but then it's always weird in terms of when those certain players are eligible for the ABs because they've been playing in Japan. Like, I don't think, can he play in the July internationals?
Yep.
Adi Savi, he can.
I mentioned this, by the way. So I always try to crack down on what's the one critique you can have on every player. With Barrett, it's probably his discipline. Sevilla, it's question about if he's available or not. Tuipulotu is probably just where he hasn't had as many.
He can't hold the ball, can he, Tuipulotu?
Well, he can. He's a pretty good season.
He just chooses not to.
Okay. Well, this is like... I think he's on a better season than Barrett. That's for sure. Barrett's been injured for part of it as well. But and again, Tuipulotu has as well. But I think you could say Tuipulotu has a better season. But the one thing I had against him was that he just hasn't had as many test caps compared to the other 2. So it's one of those where I mean, maybe this is a wrong way to go about it, but I like to say that if you're not above 50, then you need to get more to kind of be more in that conversation, because I think he's just under that with 40, in the high 40, I believe, high 40s there.
So he did get there though after a few games.
No, exactly. That's my feeling. That's why I included him. I don't want to be that harsh on him, but that's why it's one of those where when you're comparing against the other 2, they've had a lot more experience in terms of international rugby. So it's just that just goes into their favor. So yeah, it's a tough argument. But so are you saying Scott Barrett, or you're not going to go? Even that's not the way to go.
No, I was Savia if I had to pick. I would say.
Okay, and then who do you think Razor will go with?
I think Razor will probably look at Savia as well, but it's more of that question of where does Savia fit into that loose forward trio? Because don't get me wrong, Savia was great at number 8 when he got those opportunities, but at the same time, you've got to look at it as you've got a guy in Satutu who's currently in some of the best form that he's been in for a long time. He's pretty much said, after not making it into the All Blacks, I'm going to make it so that they can't deny me this time.
Yeah.
And if they do, guess what? I'm going to France or I'm going to Japan or wherever that will have me, and he'll take his millions too. But I think that Savia, for me, does have that captaincy vibe to him, if that makes sense. And of course, there was that thing how he got in trouble because he made a little gesture with his thumb. And everyone was like, oh, he could never be a captain now. But that was all a bunch of rubbish, wasn't it? Like, at the end of the day, like, these blokes are out there trying to whack into each other like they're two fridges swinging on a, like, pendulum. And everyone's worried about a little bit of a, oh, I might hurt you when I make my way back out onto the field.
To be fair, I forgot about that, actually. So it's not even like...
It's one of those ones that if you really, really want to hold it against him, I guess you could, but not many people do. I mean, we used to see it in the haka all the time as well with the ABs. Then they got told they weren't allowed to do that. But, you know, it's a weird one, Tim.
It is.
You know, this is a long podcast, isn't it?
It really is.
About an hour and 20 minutes long. I've forgotten how we started.
Yeah, but it's been
now
good
at the end,
it's been a good episode for sure.
Fun.
Yeah.
No,
it's been
can
good,
you tell
like,
I'm quite sleep deprived though?
Yeah. I'm getting there, which is not good because you're what, like you're what, 2 a.m. now or something like that. So it's
like that. Yeah.
I don't know how you do it, but anyway, guys, we'll end it there. So of course, Hamish can get some sleep, but I mean we are gonna film literally a video right after this quickly, but again, I know it's just unfortunate, but but anyway, guys, make sure to click that like button, guys. We greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out our respective channels, and see you guys next time.